the artist actually right behind you, she made all of those. So like these, and then they just like right kind of a stand.
So they're in the front
But these ones get all my and I'm still like, what did I see here? Until she went into the burrow, I'm like, that was a female. Thank you guys.
Wonderful information.
We were towards Logo Canyon, but there's like walk over started.
Why do they have to go so far? Why aren't the male burrows closer to the female burrows?
Why do they have to go so far? Why aren't the male burrows closer to the female burrows?
I don't know. So they will mate multiple times. And then I'm also coming back to, and I don't mean to say clueless, but just to give you an idea. So one of the times I'm watching and the male walks past a female burrow and it's 30 centimeters away and he just completely misses the burrow. And the next time, same distance, suddenly he's courting and she comes and mates with him. So I don't know what all of the cues are. Sometimes they're finding the burrows early, and some of it is with the females. These females, when they're coming out of the burrows, they're laying down web, and he can detect that web. So I have another great sequence where, he was just walking by, and he felt, and I'm pretty certain it smelled and touch, and it was web, and he started drumming, and she popped out of the burrow and ran at him. And again, this idea of running at him with her fangs out, that for me is, here I am, it's time to mate. She is receptive when she does that. If she doesn't want to mate, she's staying in her burrow. And so, he just turned, walked in with his hooks, hooked her up, and I had an entire mating sequence in like 3 minutes. They separated and he ran, and she just turned and went back to her burrow. So, so it's, when we're seeing them, it's like these males, they have, this is known as a scramble competition, where it's just walk around as much as you can and find as many burrows as you can and mate as many times as you can. So, but I still don't know. Each individual male, what are their chances of mating? I still don't know. And there's, I can't follow them 24 hours a day. And so until we get some different ways where I can actually see what they're doing all the time, I can tell you the ones that I've seen, how often I've seen them, and I have seen, some of mine finding a mate, but, I haven't necessarily seen it multiple times. So, but yeah, they're just looking for multiple opportunities. I assume the females will mate multiple times as well. The encounter with the two males, there was actually a female burrow there, and she had mated probably 2 days prior to that. She wasn't out, and again, was it just because when I got there she wasn't out, and she mated again with one of those two males that was there? I missed that part. I only got there when there were those two males there, so I don't know if she was just, after she's mated, she wasn't receptive anymore, or if she had participated in this threesome earlier.
When you witnessed the babies coming out, was that like into the nighttime or just kind of late?
So when the babies were coming out, what time of night? So it was, so it's always when I'm wandering around. So it was sunset, and I was just doing a walk around the site, and I was just on the way back to go and get my headlamp, so I had no headlamp already, and this happens. And so it's like, drop everything, watch for a while. So that's how I remember the exact time, because it's just as the sun was going, and I didn't have my headlamp with me. And same thing, I've seen the same thing in Mexico. It tended to be in the early evening. Now, part of the problem is that's when I'm there. So, is this happening later in the night? So, I've been there until about 2 o'clock some mornings, but not every day. But, is it happening later in the night? The only times that I have seen it in Bradley too, when he was seeing it, was usually earlier evening. But, that's just when we're seeing it. So it's always one of those things where I don't know.
The males just live for the one breeding season?
So the age of the lives of the males, so yeah, the males have one mating season, so they reach the sexual maturity. I have been looking at some, so the The males, they literally have a programmed death. So once they reach sexual maturity, and physiologically, somebody actually has looked a bit at this, but essentially there's an increase in oxides, and it essentially starts to break down the different cells in the body. And so if you kept these animals in captivity, you could feed them and give them everything that they needed, they would still die probably, within a couple of months. So there's nothing that you can do to keep them alive. What I have been doing is I've been looking a little at metabolic rates. So I am interested in, once again, throughout the season, is there a change in that metabolic rate? Are they wearing down at some level? And that's been really interesting. This is still ongoing, but I'm actually not seeing. I'm seeing the metabolic rate staying the same until literally, we have them in the metabolic chamber, and then, like 2 days later, they're dead. And so there's just this drive to be out there and be active until you just can't anymore and you're dead. But yeah, it's that one season. So 8 years, 7 to 8 years. And then you've got, a couple of months. Here in the lab, you can keep them alive. Here, it's going to be winter. Freezing temperatures, they probably died sooner, versus in my lab, I can keep them alive for longer, because I've got good environment and, food that's even there. There's nothing you can do to keep them alive. Avoid that.
How do you pick your research sites? How large are they?
Once again, the problem. So most of it is just being where are the tarantulas. And so, my work has been done with where I can find good populations of tarantulas. And really, it was, just good opportunities that brought me here. The populations here really seem to be robust, but I have nothing to compare it. There's very little population studies done on tarantulas anywhere. So I have no idea how big this, and where I am working, so once again, when you're driving down the road and you see a tarantula crossing the road, where is and then you go another mile and there's the other one. Is this all one population? No idea. Is it multiple? I don't know. Will these, I have no idea. How interesting. I mean, there's so much that we still need to know. So some of it is, I'm always just looking for places where there is a good population, where we can tell it, and we've definitely had limitations. When I worked in Texas, I could find the males, not nearly as many as I'm seeing here, could not find the female burrows. And I'm good at finding burrows. Could not find the females. And that was so frustrating, because then all I can do is see what the males are doing, but I can't see what's happening in the relation to the females. I think those female burrows, the vegetation was higher and taller and spinier, and I just couldn't find them because they were all maybe under the vegetation. I mean, both me and Todd, we were there for years. And maybe the only females that we were found was because we were following the males around and happened to see a mating. So yeah, the different environments can be so difficult, and how that impacts the tarantulas, but how it also impacts the studies that we're able to do is important.
How long do the babies stay in the burrow before they leave?
So how long do the babies stay? Once again, we have, some anecdotal data, and I wish I need to go back and read Bradley's thesis. We have a little bit of information. So one of the things when we're dealing with these babies is, trying not to disturb them too much. So, we don't want to be sticking the camera down every single day, because, does that impact what the babies are doing? And so, so we do have some idea. So when they do tend to they will have one molt within the female burrow, and then they typically move out. And so typically after they come out of the egg sac, very often they're not necessarily feeding it, they still have some yolk sac, and so they're feeding on that yolk sac. However, once they have that next molt, now they're ready to start feeding. And so where's your next big meal? Your sibling sitting right next to you. So, really important that they start to disperse at that time, because they definitely will, spiders are definitely cannibalistic. So it's, I really would have to go maybe does have his thesis published. I don't remember the exact amount of time, but we have a little bit. But again, it's just, you know, it's only a little bit of information because it was just the few that we were able to track with that, and it's really it's a matter of, you know, a week or just over.
What are some of the reasons that tarantulas aren't more widely studied?
Yeah, so one of the reasons that tarantulas are more widely studied, no one wants to do a 20-year PhD. You know, it's so difficult to, what can you address in just this short time period? You know, out of the whole, and so, you know, we do struggle with that, you know, figuring out the types of things. So at some level, they're difficult animals to do some studies with compared to, you know, what the types of studies that you see within the arachnid. You know, I can look at, you know, the evolution or, you know, the multiple matings and what happens and, you know, what, I can't do that with the tarantulas. So yeah, and so, you know, some of the other big tarantula labs, so there's a group in Uruguay, and there's a group in Chile that do a fair amount of work with tarantulas. But yeah, in the US, and there are people that work with the megalomorphs, but not necessarily the tarantulas. And you know, some of it is just because it's difficult to address some of the questions that we're trying to with just that short time period.
I noticed that some of the species in Arachnologists, like Kensi, Anax, Armada, they all look really similar, you know, just by looking at them. So what is the minimum difference you think between species?
So yeah, species differences. So you address species differences. How do you tell different species?
Sex organs. So you can differentiate species of spiders by looking at the genitalia. So there are species-specific structures associated with the male pedipalp and species-specific structures associated with females, both external and internal. So inside her body, she has spermatheca, she has other structures that are sclerotized, hardened, and chitinous. And so those structures, sometimes you have to dissect the animal in the lab and actually look at those structures, and the differences in the shape and the size, etc., will oftentimes differentiate between species. I think the lady right here had a question.
How deep are the burrows?
How deep are the burrows?
Deep are the burrows. And my answer to that question is, I go to a field site where I already know what the species is. I'm not that great with identity. Probably some of my students know more species than I do, and I'm also not great with the dissections and the things that need to be done. So I really like when I find a field site where I know the burrows. So there is again some variation, and some of it may be related to the soil structure. I also was talking to somebody who's working with this same species but in Missouri, and they don't burrow. It's very clay. They can't actually burrow into it. They're living under rocks. So there's a lot of variation. There is a student that is in Colorado, Jackie, and she has, and I think she's got a publication out, and so she did make plaster of Paris molds of the burrow. So you get the tarantula out, obviously, and then get a plaster cast of it. And so I'm waiting for her publication to find out more. You know, so usually they, you know, what I can see very often is I can see about a foot down, but then there's definitely some type of jogs over. So, you know, when I'm looking, the tarantula can hide from me. I can't see the tarantula all the time when they are in the burrow. But, you know, whether there are multiple little chambers and how far they go. I will tell you, some of the times when I got the radio tags, you know, the burrow will be over here, and I'm getting the loudest beep over here. So is it just an artifact of how the sound moves through the burrow, or is the burrow? Yeah, so hopefully there will be some more information about the burrows and the depths and sizes of the burrows. You know, so one of the things these are, since they live for so long, they do survive the winter. So they do need to be at a level where the ground doesn't freeze.
This particular tarantula, is it unique to this brown tarantula?
So the mating rituals, is this unique to this species? I think there are some broad characteristics that are true of all tarantulas. one of the, again, one of the problems that we have is, we can stage to actually to determine what's happening. You do some of this in the lab, and then what's happening in the lab, is it actually representative of what's in the field? There's definitely some differences, but it's definitely vibrational. Some species, when the male vibrates, the female will vibrate back, so she'll drum back, and so there will be some communication. I don't know if that's happening here. I don't, again, outside of the lab, I don't necessarily have a way to determine that. In the male's courtship, there is, the orientation, so typically that's how they orient, and that's very important because he has to hook up with fangs to reach to that underside, so that some of that courtship is associated with that. And so those things are really, really common. But there might be some differences in terms of some of the communication that may be happening between the species that I don't know enough about. Yeah.
Tarantula wasp.
Yes.
I've seen many hours of video. It never loses. Is it putting the tarantula in a trance?
So the hawk wasps, so yeah, I definitely see, so every time you see a tarantula hawk wasp, you're looking at that was a tarantula. So, the only way that they are born is because they came from, developing on a tarantula. And so, so this is just an interesting system. The problem is that once again, what we see and what's available to us is mostly showing, what a person is seeing or what they want to show you. So do they show any that are not successful? Does it get as many views? So I don't know. I mean, I've definitely seen wasps flying around. I don't necessarily see very many encounters. I have seen within the first few days that I was here, I did see one on the road dragging a tarantula. So I mean, they have to be successful, otherwise you wouldn't be seeing the wasps. But the interesting thing actually that Todd, since he was working with me in Texas, huge problem with the Texas the 1 year, but then not so much the next year. And one of the things he asked me was, in Texas, he saw them picking on his males a lot. When I was here earlier in the year, I saw many more pixies, but that's not when the males were around. So, so are they more targeting the females or the juveniles, which is really interesting, and so that hasn't been addressed. But I still see one or two, but not nearly as many of them as I was seeing when I was here in June. And look how many males there are. Wouldn't this be the easier time to be finding? So it's just, and so, but then what do the wasps need in terms of, they need more vegetation, more flowers, what they actually feed on. So yeah, so surprisingly, very little known, other than just some of the videos that we see, and it's anecdotal, but very few studies on that actual interaction.
We'll take a couple more.
Yeah.
So we'll take a couple more questions, and we'll stay up here if you have more, but we'll let you, once we answer a couple more questions, then if you want to wander, be sure to see what's on our tables. And if you're interested in getting news about future arachnid-related classes, lectures, workshops, I have an arachnophile email distribution list. So feel free to add your name very clearly and legibly, and your email even more legibly, on the sheet that's on that back table. But a couple more questions, and then we'll release you. Yes, sir.
Females live 4 times as long as males. Does that mean there's more males born than females? Because otherwise the ratio.
Once again, what a marvelous question. So, yeah, when you get, oh, sorry. So, what's the ratio of males to females, and in the egg sac and then in the populations? And I absolutely don't know. The egg sac, when they hatch out, we don't have even a molecular marker to be able to test sex ratios. So I don't know. But yeah, you know, again, thinking about it from this evolutionary standpoint, for these populations to be successful, you know, it's working here for sure. But you know, that certainly must play a role with these really longer-lived females. But the thing, you know, once again, when I say that they live for 20 years, is that actually what's happening in the natural environment? Yeah, I can keep an animal in the lab for 20 plus years. You know, out here there's a lot more to deal with in terms of, you know, environment and predators and, you know, wasps. And so I don't know how that may be impacting things. But yeah, that's just such an interesting question that we don't yet have a way to address easily.
Do you have the number of egg sacs that a particular female in her long life can produce?
So, you know, how many egg sacs can a female produce? Once again, no. I mean, isn't it? This is great. I mean, realizing how little we know. So what you know, once again, if you keep these animals in captivity, so you can talk to anybody who's worked with tarantulas, you know, when you have a female that is ready to mate, it is almost impossible to find somebody with a mature male to mate them with. And so, you know, in captivity, it's very difficult to actually mate them annually, or, you know, to see how often it happens. So I don't know. The interesting thing out here, so this is another thing that seems to be, so in Mexico and in Texas, the mating season would be in May, going into June. And in Texas, because I didn't have any females, I was never around when the babies were around. In Mexico, the babies were dispersing in May, but the mating season was in September. So they were incubating the sperm and laying, you know, so it's a long period when they store it. Here, when I first got here, there were babies in egg sacs and males. So if you've got a current egg sac, are you going, you as the tarantula, will these females mate this year? I don't know. You know, not only to be successful reproductively, you need to have nutrients. And if you've just had an egg sac and you've been guarding that egg sac and you haven't been out there, you know, getting prey, you may not have the body condition. So you could mate, but if you don't have enough nutrients, you cannot produce the eggs. And so they actually resorb the eggs. So this is interesting here. I don't know. So again, you know, if I have longer term studies, at the very least I've been tracking all of these egg sacs that I've been finding, and so it would be really to come back and see if I can find egg sacs with those same you know, individuals again, once again, just assuming that it is the same individual that's in that burrow. You know, yeah, so great questions. And again, it comes back to how difficult is this to study? You know, the animal that lives for an entire year, you could answer that. You could figure out, you know, how many egg sacs would they lay in their lifetime, and, you know, we still, I know, it's just great, really great to think about.
So I think we should end there. So thank you very much. Visit our tables, sign up on our sheet, and if you want to hear weird sex stories of spiders, we've got endless stories. So